Welcome, this is Josh Reeves with Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. For more information about our church, please visit our website, milehighchurch.org. Welcome those who are watching us online. It's our final message in our series on adventure in faith today, 5 Gates to Living Now. I want to take a moment this morning and give thanks for our Adventure in Faith Committee. Grateful to Jennifer Burnett, Lori Hladek, soon-to-be Reverend Steve Kinsfather, Rocio Self, Donna Denome, Reverend Chris Plim, who did our readings this morning, Dr. Michelle Medrano, and Sarah Shin. So grateful for them, and want to thank, too, Lindsay Portincaso, who's our graphic manager, who made the beautiful design, and I know she's here today, Lana Fujimoto, who helped put together all of our Adventures in Faith material. And just lastly, I want to thank all the practitioners who stepped up to lead a small group, and everyone who chose to be a part of one. So grateful for you. Yeah, let's hear it for them. So, sacred day, Halloween today. You know, we at Mile High, we try not to get involved in the culture wars, but if we were, we'd be proudly on the side of Halloween, right? Yes. There's something about dressing up as someone or something else that can help you learn about yourself a little bit, right? And I'd like to think that one day in our church, we can take on the tradition of maybe just for one day, but maybe more courageously for a week or for a month, taking on and practicing another faith tradition that could help give us insight into our own faith. What if we, for a week, practiced like our Muslim friends, praying 5 times a day, acknowledging the greatness of God in all things? Wouldn't that be resonant and powerful? What if, like our Orthodox Jewish friends, we, for a month, took a weekly Sabbath day? No work, no chores, no cell phones. Doesn't that sound delightful? Yeah. What if, like many of our Hindu friends, we made a family altar, an altar in the home where we could put images that represent divinity to us and maybe pull out some old pictures of loved ones, of our ancestors, and give them a space in our home where we could remember our ancestry and our divinity and our truth. Wouldn't that be cool? And perhaps like our Mormon friends, we could coordinate at our own home a family home evening where with our own family or family of choice, we could intentionally get together for the only purpose of enjoying one another's company. I think all of these traditions, all religious traditions, the traditions that they make aren't theirs alone. They're meant for all of us. And when we can integrate them into our spiritual life, powerful spiritual realizations can occur. And yet it begs the question, if someone were to practice for a week religious science, our denomination, what would we tell them to do? If someone is to practice Mile High spirituality for a week, what might they practice? Anybody? Be in the now. Treatment and meditation? Yes. Gratitude? Great. Anybody else? Oneness. Something about reality, which I thought was awesome. Thoughts create reality. Wonderful. Affirmative prayer. Oh, one mind, too, at the same time. Great. Yeah. Yes, great, wonderful. There's all these great things we can do. For me, it would probably start, hopefully sometime in the morning. It's taking that time to affirm the highest good for yourself and your life and for all people. That's the kicker. That, to me, is what makes religious science really unique, is that it's not just about affirming things for yourself. Oh, I want a microwave, I want a cell phone, I want lots of money. That's all good, and I hope you get it. But there's something about us that even the people we don't like, we take that time to know the highest and best good for everyone. The good news is you still don't have to like the people that you don't like. However, you don't keep God's grace or God's love or God's divinity for them. Another practice when engaging in the world and engaging in media, whether it's the New York Times or your Twitter feed, there's something about embodying how Ernest Holmes defined our philosophy as a correlation, a synthesis of laws of science, opinions of philosophy, and revelations of religion applied to humankind and the aspirations of us all. And we do that by looking in the world for those new great provings of science, for those new great ideas on how to live a thriving life from philosophy, listening to those who are grounded and centered in the divine truth. There's a great power in that. Socrates once said that weak people discuss people. They gossip. Average people or minds discuss events, but great minds discuss ideas. So there's something to me about our spirituality that's looking for those highest and best ideas to embody and bring into our life today, to rise a rung above the muck thinking. Lastly, somewhere in your day, every day, give your life, even if it's just a little bit of it, to God. Give a little bit of that control of your life back to God. In our teaching, we believe in what we like to call co-creation of our lives with God. So yes, we're at choice, and we're beings of volition. And yes, there's a divine destiny for us, but it's not just those two things alone. They go together, and we work with God in the creation of our own life, our own relationships, our own harmony of being. There was once a cardinal who had a really rough day and went to the chapel at night to talk to God. And he said, "God, is this your diocese or is it mine?" And God answered him and said, "Well, what do you think?" "I think it's yours." "I think you're right," God said. "Okay," the cardinal said, "I'm going to release my control and give it over to you and get some rest." And for me, that's not only true in that story for the church, and not only is it true for Mile High Church, it can be true for our lives. That we do everything we can each day to make the highest and best choices for ourselves and others, and yet there's something about realizing that power greater than we are, that knows better than we do more often than not, to allow it into our lives to demonstrate its wisdom, its clarity, its grace, its wonderment, its understanding. This all begs the question, of course, what about your own faith? What are the daily or weekly or monthly traditions that you do to strengthen your understanding of what it means to live in the world today? I've shared this before, but for a lot of people, moving through this pandemic has been a time for them of losing faith. Josh, I'm losing my faith. I'm losing sense with my spiritual connection. I no longer feel that humanity's on the right track. There's so much divisiveness out there. It's hard to remember that we're one with all this crap going on, right? It's hard. I'm losing that sense of faith. I always think of what Karen Miller said. She said of faith, "You won't believe me, but you already have it. You have it when you surrender to a night's slumber and open your eyes to another day. You have it every time you exhale and in that half second before you automatically inhale again. You have it when you put on your shoes or when you don't and walk across the planet without falling off the face of it. We all have faith. It's just about where we put it, where we invest it. And the stronger our faith in that infinite power, the more it returns to us with greater awareness and being." Where has your faith been, particularly in these pandemic times? When the pandemic first started, just racing through my mind over and over was a quote from Joseph Campbell, who said, "When the world seems to be falling apart, hold on to your own bliss. That's the one thing that survives." So what has been your bliss in this time? Hopefully it's not been something too weird that leads you astray, but something that focuses you. And I'm so grateful to be able to share that for me, my faith has been my bliss. I'm so grateful in this time where faith can be challenged. When the people of the world are struggling to move through a pandemic, when there's racial reckoning and understanding to be had and needed in all of our lives, when there's political divisiveness and people who we were friendly with before we have a distrust or feel a cold shoulder from. These are all difficult things, but I am so grateful that even in seeming divisiveness, I've been able to remember that we're one, So grateful when humanity seems a little misled to be able to believe of the internal good and possibility in each one of us. It's been a grateful gift. I'm so grateful for that little girl that I brought out here at the beginning, and for my son, and to be a part of the spiritual community, to be reminded regularly that there's a deep goodness in life that can overcome any seeming obstacle. And I just have to remember it. I just have to cultivate it. I just have to cultivate an awareness of it and sow it into the fabric of my everyday life so that I can feel it and remember it, even when all the voices might be telling me the opposite. Miller goes on to share, and it speaks to this idea of faith. What do you practice? Whatever you practice, you'll get very good at. Some people become more fearful or cynical, some more arrogant or vain, some greedier, some needier, some more combative or closed-minded. That's what they practice. And then there are a few who grow as solid as a mountain and as wide open as the sky. They are strong yet tender, steady yet yielding, powerful yet gentle. You will recognize them because they resemble the earth you can touch and the sky you cannot contain. It's not that they are superhuman. They are more completely human than most of us ever allow ourselves to be. And do you know who I think of when I read that? You. You incredible people who have cultivated and held and raised and deepened in your faith in these challenging times. And if no one has acknowledged you for your faith and holding a greater vision for humanity in your world around you, I do. I acknowledge you. If it feels good, turn around to someone around you and say, I acknowledge your faith. I acknowledge your faith. You've worked hard. You've hung in. And we're ready to move forward. We're ready to step into this final gate to living now today of rebirth. Because here's the thing about this pandemic. It will end. This pandemic will end. I wish I could tell you when. 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, whatever it may be. It will end. And each of us will have to make the choice if we allow the pandemic consciousness to keep going. Right? There are two schools of thought in our religious science philosophy. There's some who say never have pandemic consciousness. And then there are those who say when you're in a pandemic, a little pandemic consciousness might be an okay thing. Not to live from fear, but to care for yourself, to be discerning, to be cautious and conscious and caring. And yet, when this thing is over, what will it mean, even today, even right now, to step fully back into thriving, trusting more and more, and deepening in our love of this thing called life, so it can take all that love and give it back to us in so many different formations and demonstrations of our reality. Rebirth is this beautiful symbol of allowing our spirit to rise to what our life is calling us into today. It's a recognition of the transition or death, we might say, that it says what once was in my consciousness has taken me up to now, but now I need a brand new, creative, and uplifted consciousness to carry me forward. That's the great power of spiritual rebirth. And speaking of interfaith and practicing different traditions, I love the tradition that I'll call today of mystical Christianity. Rebirth is a theme in all religious traditions, but there's something about the being born again that happens through the ministry of Jesus that I think is so powerful. And, we religious scientists who aren't really all that like-minded, we're like-hearted. We do think differently from one another. There's often two schools of thought. Are we Christian? Right? So let's take an unofficial poll. How many say, are we Christian? Are we not Christian? Oh, I think the not Christians win this one. All right. Ernest Holmes was once talking with a circle, and he was trying to explain how we're Christian because our whole teaching is based upon the teachings or the ministry of Jesus, right? Prayer, forgiveness, inclusivity, this topic of rebirth that I'll get to. And he said, so I think we're Christian. And there was a guy that said, well, yeah, but we don't believe in hell. We believe it's okay to not be a Christian, right? We love the Bible, but we don't worship the Bible, right? And we don't say we're the one and only way. So therefore we're not. And Holmes said, good point. And they kept talking, right? Right? It's all about bringing these ideas together. And for me, I believe that we're a mystical Christianity. And there's this great practice with mystical Christianity, especially with this idea of rebirth, where we can look beyond the surface meaning that we may find in the Gospels and find divine words meant and designed for our own hearts. And when Jesus talks about being born again and rebirth, his message is really simple. That we all have a physical birth. But just like Marquez said in our reading, life affords us the opportunity to give birth to ourselves over and over. So to be reborn is to have your spiritual birth. You know, when were you spiritually born? When did you become aware of the presence of the divine in your life and in the universe? When did you come to realize that you were born of and live in something that is eternal? For when we have that spiritual rebirth, we live and have our way and our being in what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. And we could just call it the good life, the blessed life, the divine life. So you can look at statements in the Gospels, something like, I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one. Again, I don't think Jesus said this being patriarchal. I think he was pointing out that God isn't some distant presence that doesn't like you. God is like a parent who loves you like a mother loves her child, unconditionally, incredibly. And so we hear that statement, I and the Father are one, and initially we say, well, that's cool, Jesus and God are one. But what about when we know it for ourselves? What about when I can say, I and the Father are one? I and the Father are one. If you feel comfortable, you can say it to yourself too. I and the Father are one. I and the Father are one. There's this deep transformational thing that can happen that isn't about hypnotizing or making suggestions to our subconscious that God and I are one, but it awakens that part of us that already knows that you and God are one, that the divine is within you. And when we wake it up, again, we can begin to weave this awareness into our lives, into the fabric of our relationships, our health, our way of seeing the world that creates practical and pragmatic demonstrations of healing, of forgiveness, of understanding, and seeing life not just as we think it may have been, but as it is. Joel Goldsmith, the great metaphysical teacher, he would encourage students to take a statement like this and just to practice it in meditation for a month. He'd say to practice this principle hour after hour, day in and day out, for 1 month or 2 months, holding to God as the law of our being, God as the source of our good, God as the activity of our day, changes our entire experience. At first, this is all in the realm of the mind, but by constant practice, I'm beeping over here. It leaves the realm of the mind and comes down into the heart, into the awareness, into consciousness, and then it takes over and lives our experience. Lives our experience. I and the Father are one. Another one that I love, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And sometimes when I say it, I feel silly at first. You're not just blasphemous, but a little silly. Because I, the guy who had French fries and a root beer for dinner last night, I who woke up with a little bit of drool hanging out of his mouth this morning, and the way, the truth, and life. But that's not the I that this statement speaks to. It's that I am presence, the presence of the divinity within us. And when we discover it within us, we begin to see that it's all around us. Look to your left, and I am there. Look to your right, and I am there. Look under a stone, and I am there. That divine presence underlying all of existence begins to illuminate in such a way that we begin to see clearly and begin to live more emphatically in alignment with who we really are. Awaken that Christ awareness, that divine awareness, that Buddha awareness, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it within you, that true you awareness that your life is calling for, that your life is longing for, that just by being the powerful presence that you are can demonstrate in magnificent healing and powerful ways. Probably my favorite statement in the Gospels that I think we can take to heart is the words that are heard by everyone when Jesus is baptized. He has his baptism experience with John, gets dunked in the water, and a dove ascends, and there's a voice that says, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And I think that voice was not just meant for Jesus that day. It's meant for each and every one of us when we experience spiritual rebirth. When we realize the gift of the kingdom, the gift of the divine to us, and we know that we are one with a greater source, then we become the beloved of the divine. It's a powerful experience to have, to know no matter what you do, when you know the truth of who you are beloved. Not easy to act like it in all the areas of our lives, but to really listen and receive that. You are my beloved child in whom I am well pleased. And that pleasure is the divine in us, rejoicing that we have come back to ourselves, that we have opened ourselves, that we have returned to love from wherever we have gotten ourselves lost in. Henry Nouwen, a great Catholic teacher, would say that if he could sum up all of Christianity, he would sum it up in those words: you are the beloved. He wrote a book called Life of the Beloved, where he is trying to talk to a gentleman who's a little spiritual but not religious, skeptical, scientific, and yet lacking a sense of meaning and truth in his life, probably like a lot of us here. And he shares with him that if you could just hear and feel those words, "you are the beloved," you would get the message from this rabbi of 2,000 some years ago, that you are a beautiful child of God, a beautiful expression of what that is, and to be it in your life. And yet there are so many voices that can discount that voice, that get in the way. He shares, it certainly is not easy to hear that voice in a world filled with voices that shout, "You are no good. You are ugly. You are worthless. You are despicable. You are nobody," unless you can demonstrate the opposite. These negative voices are so loud and so persistent that it is easy to believe them. That's the great trap. It is the trap of self-rejection. And when we embrace a more mystical spirituality, I think what we come to understand is there's no such thing as a God that rejects us. There's only a self that rejects us. There's no such thing as some being out there that's going to cast us into hell. But we can sometimes put ourselves there every day through self-rejection, through negative self-talk, through dismissing and being overly pessimistic about humanity's chances in the world. Be discerning, recognize the problems, please, but know that we're capable, that you are the beloved. Now, and continues, every time you listen with great attentiveness to the voice that calls you the beloved, you will discover within yourself a desire to hear that voice longer and more deeply. It is like discovering a well in the desert. Once you have touched wet ground, you want to dig deeper. That's how powerful what is within you is. That is how powerful what is within you is. And so it is our calling to cultivate it, to listen to it, to listen to the blessing implanted in each of us, and again, seek to weave it in our lives. One more saying that I kind of find inspiring. It comes in the parable of the Good Samaritan, and often when Jesus is telling parables, the Father, the Lord, symbolizes divinity, symbolizes God. And these are the words of the Father to the kind of uptight, dutiful son in the parable. He says, "My son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. See if you can hear that from the divine, the voice of the divine in your own heart. You are always with me, and all that I have is yours. All that you have, God, I just want a little bit. I just want a little bit of love to fully live this day. I just want a little bit of wisdom to understand this day. I just want a little bit of clarity to see in your eyes this day, just a little bit. But what does God say? No, all of it is yours. If I was Oprah Winfrey, I'd be inviting you to look under your seats right now. Our founder says, how much good can we have? How much life can you accept that's not repudiated by your own denials? That much you can have. God gives all of herself to us, and yet only asks that we give a little of ourselves to God. How much of yourself, of your time, because it could just be 10 minutes a day. How much of your willingness, how much of your openness are you willing to give to that power in the universe greater than you are? Because as you continue to give just little bits of yourself to it, all of it begins to download, to percolate, to come forward, to drip, to move into our consciousness at the level of our receptivity and acceptedness. You are a child of the divine. There's no greater blessing than to realize it, to see it in those around us, to use the tough love if needed to remind those around us of that truth, and to uplift, not to push down. There's no use. Just lift up. Start with your own heart. Have that experience of rebirth. If not a one-time experience, then a daily one. Waking up more and more that you live in a divine universe, and that there are infinite possibilities, not just in the seeds of your soul, but in your words, in your actions, in your choices. And all we are called to do is to give a little of ourselves each day, to open ourselves to that deeper and grander understanding that we will now welcome and acknowledge in prayer. So just moving into this moment of prayer, and I invite our prayer practitioners who are here today to stand and join with me, and not to get on a tangent, but we have two here that I particularly love who are making a move. Their names are Ken and Lisa. They've provided so much to our spiritual community and remain a part of it no matter where they go. But I just know and just bless them as they make their big move, and I hope they feel the love of their Mile High family with them. And I just speak this word today, knowing that that blessing of life is always giving of itself. And so I declare to release any parts of myself that may block this blessing because of fear, because of pessimism, because of not knowing, and allow this blessing to show up in me and as me and in all that I do. I accept this blessing into my body and know that it demonstrates His health and wellness. I accept this divine blessing in my relationships and know that it demonstrates as connection, as oneness, as forgiveness, and as growth and understanding. I accept this blessing for my world, for all of humanity in it, to be reminded and uplifted, to have the courage to do what we are called to do, and yet to know that there is a divine presence with us always, motivating us with that incredible spiritual momentum to move us forward. Knowing that even when we forget who we are, something in us remembers and knows who we are. May we move into that place and allow it to demonstrate into our life perfect clarity, perfect love, perfect inspiration, perfect creativity. In alignment with this divine blessing, we have everything we need. Why wouldn't we give that little bit of ourselves to it each day to uplift and to see it manifest as that divine kingdom, as that divine grace in joy and in prosperity in every area of our lives? And so it is.
Thanks for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. To make a donation, please visit milehighchurch.org.